Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Success Thursday this week with Catherine Krause. Hey Catherine, welcome back.
Hey Vasco.
So Catherine, on Thursdays we talk about the question of the week, right? The success question. But before we dive into that, we do want to know, what's your favorite retrospective format and why?
Great. So I'd like to talk about my favorite retrospective. It's interesting because it's actually one I don't use very often, but when I do, it's so powerful. I use this retrospective for when my team is really playing the victim. So they are blaming, they're complaining, they're feeling, pretty down and pretty powerless. So it doesn't happen very often, luckily, but when it does, this is kind of what I pull out of my bag. I do an exercise where teams basically need to identify the parts of their work that they can control directly, factors they can influence, and also things that are just outside of their control. And once these factors are kind of sorted out, I find that the team can really make better decisions on how to prioritize their efforts. So I was first introduced to this technique. It appeared to me, at least in Stephen Covey's work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He uses it more as a personal coaching exercise where you can kind of personally look at these things and evaluate, kind of what you can control and what not. But then I saw it in a retrospective by Diana Larson called Circles and Soup. And some listeners might be familiar with that. So basically, you draw 3 large concentric circles on a whiteboard, or of course, virtually. And you label the circles control, influence, and I use, instead of soup, I use accept, because I just find it's more intuitive to say, accept rather than the soup. There's a little explanation of why it's called the soup. But for my team members, accept seemed to be more straightforward. So basically, the team then writes down the various factors involved in their work and puts them in the appropriate circle. So again, the inner circle will be control. So these are things that the team can control directly. The middle circle is influence. So these are things that, the team can influence, but doesn't necessarily control. And then the outer circle is accept. So these are factors outside the team's control, and the team should be ready to accept, at least for now. And I really love this retrospective because the team comes out with things that they can take action on, control. So that's usually things they can take action on right now. There are things that they can kind of work towards, like influencing, things that they can influence. And then they really feel like they have the power to change. And I find that even more importantly, they can let go of things that are, just bogging them down. And this is also so helpful because they can just kind of get it out of their mind, and we can really focus on things that are creating value for us, our team, and also for our customers.
One of the things that comes to mind from this retrospective format is that there's the risk when we don't do this kind of retrospectives, there's the risk of just getting the endorphins from the putting the enemy out there, right? Like just complaining about everything, right? Like a complaint fest style retrospective. But when you put those circles on the board and you ask, so where do these different things fall? And then, of course, you explain what the accept circle is, then people kind of realize that, yeah, actually, we're spending a lot of time talking about things we can't do anything about, right? Like we can't do anything about the weather. What's the point in complaining about the rain, right? Let's just go out and have fun singing in the rain, like the old movie, right?
Yeah, or take your umbrella.
or dress better. Like in Finland, in Finland, we usually say there's no bad weather, there's only bad clothing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you just take it as it comes because there's nothing you can do about the weather. And I think that's a very powerful mental tool that we can give our teams, right? So that they can step out of the sometimes negative spiral of complaint and say, yeah, this is not fun, but hey, we can't do anything about. And by the way, there's all these other things we can do something about. So let's focus on those. My own experience with this, I would like to hear your thoughts, but my own experience with this is that this retrospective is not necessarily a retrospective that leaves the team with a lot of energy at the end, but it is a retrospective that leaves the team usually with peace, right? Like the sense that, yeah, it's fine, right? Like I usually use the grandmother metaphor. The things that you need to accept are those things that you'll just go to your grandmother, you complain, and she'll say, "Oh, Catherine, everything will be fine. Here, have a cookie." Right? It's like this, here, have a cookie moment. It doesn't solve the problem, but it also makes you feel like it's fine. Like nothing bad is going to happen.
Yeah, I have to say, like my experience doing this, it's a very intense retrospective. You do even need a little bit more time for it, a little bit extra time than maybe a typical retrospective. But what I find is that at the end of the day, it's a little bit like a cleansing and kind of getting things on the table. And it's also, agreeing as a team of what do they want to focus on, right? So it gives you renewed focus. And, it doesn't mean that there's still not problems, right? So if you don't have a development environment that's working, this is a problem, right? It might be not something you can control, but for now, you can do things that could be in your control. And so that's what the team needs to focus on. So it gives them kind of renewed focus on what they can actually do here and now. And it doesn't mean that they can maybe change things in the long term, but it helps them focus, at least for the here and now, what they can actually take little actions on. And I think that's really empowering.
Absolutely. It's empowering. That's a great way to define it. All right, Catherine, now we turn our attention to the success question, right? The question of the week here on the podcast. So tell us, what does success for a Scrum Master mean for you?
Yeah, this is something that I really thought about, and it's very hard to create kind of a single definition of what makes a good Scrum Master. I know a lot of people have tried, and I've listened to many people on your show explain their definition of success. I'm a really visual person, so I would probably use a metaphor to explain my definition of success for my role as a Scrum Master. So I want to be a really good lookout for my team. And if you're familiar with these kind of nautical terms, so a lookout is a person on a ship's bridge who continuously watches the sea to report any kind of hazard that can be an obstacle in the navigation and can cause harm to the ship. So it's a very important role on a ship. And a lookout is required to kind of give her uninterrupted attention at all times to the ship navigation. And so she's there to really inform about, where is the land and where's other ships and potential, shipwrecks and debris and floating objects. And I feel as a Scrum Master, I'm looking out for dangers and opportunities for my ship. And that's my team, it's my PO and, my organization. So I'm looking out for everyone here. And as a Scrum Master, I'm coaching Agile, but it's also up to me to anticipate what we need next. And I need to be looking out for what's on the horizon. What's important here is I'm not steering the boat, but I can call out what I'm seeing, from this higher perspective up there and, on the bridge. And I'm watching over the working environment. I'm looking at, team spirit. I'm checking out the team backlog. I'm making sure that the Scrum ceremonies are happening and sprinkles are in place, all that stuff. And a good lookout is not just looking ahead, but even sometimes looking behind, to things, how have we done things in the past, and to also look at it that way, right? So we need to see also different perspectives that way, looking ahead and also looking behind. And what's interesting is I'm, like a lookout, I'm not just using my eyes, but I'm using whatever it takes. So radar, radio, whatever. So I really kind of have this all around awareness of the moment. And I need to kind of draw on many, many tools, many things. And so I'm a successful Scrum Master when I can just, assess the risks and opportunities, but I can also, successfully, let's say, pull out the right tools and communicate to others, the way forward, I would say.
Yeah, and one aspect of that metaphor, if we just take it one step further, is that, as you said, you're not piloting the ship, right? Like the captain is piloting the ship, or maybe it's not the captain, maybe it's somebody else that is piloting the ship while the captain is doing something else. So the point is that a lookout, and I think it's a great metaphor, a lookout is a critical information source for the success of the ship, in this case, the team, but it's not the one that causes that success, right? The success is then caused by everybody, like everybody working, everybody handling the machine room, whatever, right? Like everything else is necessary. So I really like this aspect of looking more at the Scrum Master as kind of a sensor or a group of sensors, right? That brings in information. And then, of course, the team needs to decide what to do with it. And I think that's a very powerful metaphor. So thank you for sharing that, Catherine.
Sure.
Part of a successful Scrum Master job is to help the product owner. Tomorrow we explore that critical role in Scrum, the product owner role. Tune in to learn about product owner anti-patterns, what you can do to help the product owner, and a real-life example of what a great product owner is and what made it so, tomorrow on our Friday Product Owner episode. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.